it shocks me that I didn't know about this. It shocks me that something that I think is so, I mean, 1 in 8 women are diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime. 1 in 8. Like, you look around when you're having dinner with your friends, like, that's one of those people. And like, that is not a small statistic.
Everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of It Takes Grit. I have just been giggling away with the beautiful Amanda Loy. We've actually been talking about what our alter ego names would be. So what was yours again, Amanda?
Janine, yeah.
Janine, and mine is Lucy. So Friday night, if you see Janine and Lucy out about town, then you know who we are.
Oh, okay.
So awesome. Okay, guys. Well, I'm so excited that you're here for another episode of It Takes Grit. Make sure that you leave us a review. Go over to Spotify and iTunes. Just let us know the feedback and what you guys feel about how these episodes are really impacting and changing your life. And I'm going to head straight into this because we've got lots and lots of things to talk about today, things that are really close to your heart. And I know that the audience and the listeners are going to get so much from. So first of all, Amanda Loy, tell everybody who you are, why you're a badass, and what we're going to be talking about today. So just tell everyone about you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Where do I even fucking start, right? P.S. I swear a shit ton. My brand is called Live Your Fuck Yes Life. So if that gives you any indication, that's my shit. But yeah, I mean, I've had kind of a crazy journey. The past, I want to say 7 years have been really transformational for my growth as a human. And I originally, so like I'm what I call a slasher. I do a lot of shit. And I live in the entrepreneurial world, but I also have a background in acting and I still do that. I love it. It's my passion. Being on stage is so incredible. But I was feeling, about, I guess probably 5 years ago, I was feeling really lost and just like really fucking frustrated. Have you ever felt like you're in a quarter life crisis breakdown, like movie style edition sob fest where you're like, I can't do this anymore. Like something has to change. And just like, yeah, I was a hot mess. And my husband found me like that on the floor. And at the time I was working 7 part-time jobs, which I hated. Like I didn't like any of them, and just trying to scrape by, pay the bills, and was also knee deep in a binge eating disorder, orthorexia, and was having panic attacks for the first time in my life. And I was like, this is not okay. Like I am not okay. And that was kind of the precipice of what I like to call my rock bottom, although I think I've had a few more since. And it's just kind of led me to this path of creating my own story instead of perpetuating one that was built for me by someone else. And that led to me starting a business originally as more of like a fitness and wellness coach. And then that progressed to emotional eating and binge eating, which is where the most of my work now lies, in addition to mindfulness. And, it led me to launching my podcast about 1.5 years ago, and just all of the things that I'm doing now. And I'm in the middle of writing a book about something that I know we're going to talk about today, which we can either dive into now. But yeah, it's been kind of a crazy year and some crazy health stuff. And yeah, I'm like 3/4 of the way done with my book for that, which has been pretty crazy. So that's kind of where I'm at now. There's so many things in the middle, but yeah, it's been kind of a crazy journey for sure.
That's so exciting. I think the biggest point here is that, hey, you might not just hit rock bottom once. You actually might hit rock bottom a couple of times.
Like every year.
Okay. I know, like some people are like, oh my goodness, I hit rock bottom. I'm like, well done. There's going to be a couple more. Like, let's get used to it. And it's how quickly, I'm sure the first time that you hit that rock bottom, it was a lot harder to come back from, and since the last one. Like I feel like you rebound quicker.
Totally. And I also think that, as you start to do work on yourself, you learn tools that help you navigate the mess, right? Because I think we live in this world where we're expected to have this perfect life and this curated experience that is so far from the truth. And I speak it as it is. I don't sugarcoat shit. Like I talk about the mess. I talk about things that are taboo because I feel like that is what the world needs more of. And there aren't enough people just like sharing that shit, because otherwise we feel so alone and that we're the only person going through the mess. And that is far from the truth. Like even the people who you look up to, who have the like perfect Instagram accounts or, you know, are making millions of dollars, like they have a shit ton of mess. And I just think it's really important to remind people of that and know that like by talking about it, you're reminding everyone that we're human and we're all just part on this journey together, navigating the mess as we go. So
totally. And I find a lot of times people go, oh, I'm going through something right now that's really tough. And you know, oh, you don't understand like this. I'm like, honestly, and every single level of person is dealing with their own BS, right?
Totally.
Everyone has got their own shit. So if you're listening right now and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm going through something really tough. Like you are not alone. Like we are all part of this crazy thing called life, which I feel now is the hardest time to live in with everything on social media and expectations. It's like, don't worry if you're going through a funk or going through a rut. It's let's bounce back quicker from it than you did the time before.
Totally. And yeah, and just like arm yourself with tools, have people in your corner who are going to help you rise up, whether those are coaches that you work with or friends that are not toxic and are supporting you and allowing you to really show up as your true self. Like it's so important to arm yourself with those things. And I think once you have that in your back pocket, it's so much easier to say, okay, this is hard. I'm going to feel the feels and navigate this and fully like admit that this sucks, but also know that I'm strong and I can, you know, overcome this mountain that was put in front of me. And
I love what you said about having a toolbox, because I know that things that would have pissed me off or made me lose my shit 5 years ago, I would have spiraled out of control, like emotional, like whatever. And now the same thing happens to me and I'm like cool as a cucumber. I'm like,
totally. I was the girl in traffic who would yell, like scream at people and be like, fuck you. Like, what do you think you're doing? Like, you're a terrible driver. I'd like roll down my window. I was that girl, which is so funny now. Like knowing me, I'm like so positive and you would never see me be like that behind the wheel. But I think when you're really in the depths of it and you feel like you don't have an outlet that's helping you and helping you thrive, you know, you resort to shit and you resort to things that don't empower you, like yelling at people in their car, which like really is hurting you more than it is hurting.
Yeah, I would have meltdowns, like crying, hysterical meltdowns. Like I'm sure the boyfriends I was with at the time would be like, okay, like, are you sane? Are you like here? And like, you know, it's you know, you feel like you're going crazy. And, you know, there's still times where I'm like, whoa, like I kind of lost myself a little bit there, but I've had the tools. And I think that's the important thing, is getting the tools and using personal development so that you can, when situations happen, you're just better at responding. Because it's reactions, right? I mean, like you're yelling at somebody in the car, it's just a reaction. And the only person that got rallied up was you. The person driving the cars, where we're like, all right, chill out, mate, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I also think that like your thoughts and the way in which you operate, like you have full control over that. That is nobody else, you know, it's solely on you. So it's also about how you want to show up. Like, do you want to be angry all the time? Like I had to really look at myself and be like, do I really want to be pissy and negative all the time? Because this is not fun. Like I'm not in a good headspace. And that's really where I started doing the work. And I had never heard of personal development before. And then I was like, oh, this is a crazy world that I'm living in. Like, it's like a kid in a candy shop. Just like, give me some of this, give me some of that.
I love it. Well, before we dive into the main part of what we're going to chat about today, I do just want to touch on the eating disorder and anorexia, if you don't mind us going into that, because that's something that I align with. And a lot of my audience struggle with the same aspects. So tell me like the background, how old you were, why it happened, and how you overcome it.
Yeah. So my version of my eating disorder was actually not anorexia. It was a binge eating disorder and orthorexia. And it was also like fitness fueled for a while. But it really
explain that to people who are like, what does binge eating look like? What does orthorexia look like? Like, what is that?
Yeah. So binge eating and orthorexia often are paired because it really is linked to, you've probably experienced this yourself when you've like been on a diet, which let's be honest, we all have at some point in our lives. I was a yo-yo dieter for years. And you restrict your body, right, by not eating certain food types, or I didn't eat carbohydrates for 2 years, which knowing what I know now is baffling to me, because carbohydrates are literally how you have energy and sustain your body, which is just so crazy. But anyways, and so we limit the amount of calorie intake or whatever we're doing within the diet. And then our body goes into, hey, fuck you. Like, I need these nutrients. I need to have something. But instead of being able to have like a fully fueled meal with whole foods that really, really give you the nutrition you need, your body goes into like starvation crazy. I used to call it my binge monster. And this usually happens at night. And you just go and raid your pantry, right? Or what I would do is I would go to the local 7-Eleven or, you know, any grocery store, and I would just get a bunch of crap, usually like ginger snap cookies or a thing of Nutella or Ben & Jerry's like half pint of ice cream. And I would sit in my car and I would eat, and I would cry while I was eating because the guilt was so real, but it's like I couldn't stop. And the women I work with, it's to the point where like food has taken over their life, and it's fully controlling like everything. And the guilt and the shame around it is so palpable. And it's really, really hard to overcome, especially when it's become such a part of your cyclical life. And that was my life for years. I was, you know, eating what my husband used to call my bird food days. I would eat like nuts and vegetables during the day and work out for 2 hours at the gym. And then I would come home and binge and cry and do it all over again. And the cycle of that was really consistent. And I see that coming up over and over again with women that I work with. So that's really orthorexia meets binge eating. And I also think that orthorexia there's a lot of definitions around it, but I think that a big component of that too is that you try to offset the calories you're intaking, even if they're from whole nutritious foods, with exercise. And that was me. I mean, I spent 2 hours in the gym every day running, which I hate running. Like, why the fuck was I running? I hate it. And I love fitness. Like, I genuinely love it. I believe in it so strongly, but I also have seen so many women deeply, deeply destroy their hormones and just like really, really mess with their body image and the way in which they ingest food and their mindset around fitness. So yeah, that's kind of the two pieces of it. And for me, it's honestly been my whole life that I've struggled, especially with body image. I remember when I was 6 years old, it's crazy that I was so young, but I was 6 years old and I really, really wanted to take ballet for whatever reason. And so my mom was like, okay. And so we got, you know, I got all the things like the cute little leotard and the pink tights. And I was so excited to go into this class. And I walked in and I like put my stuff down, and I noticed there was this group of girls who were clearly knew each other from before, and they were talking. And I heard like out of the corner of my eye, whatever. I heard one of them say like the word pig, and I didn't really think anything of it at first, but then like we all got into our lines and like they were laughing at me and pointing, and I just remember feeling so much shame and for the first time looking at myself and wondering why I didn't look like these other girls. And I never went to ballet again until like college. But that kind of started it. I would have breakdowns in the changing room. Like when I was like, you know, middle school, just like unable to feel comfortable in my own skin, like going shopping, just ask my mom. It was a nightmare. Like I just couldn't do it. But then it got really bad in college. I went to school for musical theater, and I gained 30 pounds between my freshman and sophomore year. And, you know, I'd gotten out of a relationship that was like the first love, and was just like eating my feelings for the first time in my life. And I wasn't young anymore. And so it was sticking on my body. And, you know, it started to get really bad my sophomore and junior year of college, especially when some of my professors were like, you're not going to be successful as an actor if you don't lose weight. And unfortunately, you know, if you are in the world of theater or acting or a film, that's true. You know, it just is. And so I was like, all right, I got to make a change. And I went on like a crazy diet that made me lose 30 pounds in 6 months. And I was just as miserable at a size 2 as I was at a size 12. And that just started the perpetual back and forth nature that I mentioned earlier. So it's definitely been a journey, and I've been binge free for about 3 years now, which has been so incredible. And honestly, something I never thought I'd be able to overcome. And I think that's where my passion grew so strongly for helping women, because there was nobody coaching about that I could see. It was so not talked about. And I'm like, I'm so alone here. And I just want women to know that like, that is so not true. And it can be done with intention. And honestly, it's mostly mindset work that I take my clients through. There's not a big nutrition factor to it. There's a small piece of that, but it really starts with the way you view yourself and the way you view food. And once you can transform that, then everything shifts, right? And like everything starts to really, really come into place, and you find your healthy, happy self in the process.
Totally. And we talk about 20% is fitness, 80% nutrition, but 100% is your mindset. So if you haven't got that 100%, those other two things aren't going to come in line. And how old are you right now?
I'm 28.
28. Okay, great. So 25 was when you started to like kind of figure stuff out.
Yeah.
Just funny, like that's kind of my age too. And we're like thinking like, oh, we have to have everything figured out like by the time we're 21 or 23. And by the way, everybody, we're still figuring this shit out.
Yeah, always.
Like, every single day, I'm like, am I doing this right? Am I the right person? I'm like every single day, but it gets easier. Like you when you react to things, it becomes less like, you know, you would maybe hold a grudge on yourself for like a week. And now it becomes like a few days, and then it becomes a few hours, and then it becomes a few minutes. So it really is that working on yourself to transform how you perceive yourself.
And I think we also live in a society where we're told that everything needs to happen like that, right? We live in a quick fixes, especially in the wellness industry. It's like, quick fix this, like 21 days and you're going to be at your best shape. And it's like, I call bullshit. Like it takes time to slowly build in habits and really do the inner work that's going to be sustainable. And it's going to allow you to have the things you have in life and that you want, and feel the way you want to feel, instead of just, you know, arbitrarily being able to I don't know, look good in a bathing suit for a day and then, you know, in 2 months, like gain all that weight back and more some and feel totally worthless. Like it's just not worth it. Like, let's end that. I'm so over that bullshit.
Let it go, because there's other health issues that are more important that we can sometimes neglect because we're so focused on something else. And this is what I wanted to talk to you about next is, you know, BRCA 1 positive. I have no idea about this. In fact, this is actually perfect for me to educate myself. And so I want you to take away and talk about your journey and why this is so important to educate other people. Because as someone who's me, I'm 31 years old. I don't know anything about this. And you're 28.
I know. And I didn't know anything about it until a year ago either. So, what Rebecca is talking about is the BRCA1 gene, which is linked to breast and ovarian cancer. And there's also another strand of it, which is the BRCA2 gene. But yeah, I mean, you probably have heard of like Angelina Jolie, you know, and her like double mastectomy and like this big thing. And like, that was really the only concept I had around women taking preventative action around breast cancer. I didn't know it was linked to a gene or a genetic mutation. And I didn't know that it had any like potent information to me. But I just remember reading about them being like, that's cool. That's badass. What a warrior she is, you know? But yeah, so about a year ago, in February 2018, January 2018, I decided to get tested for the BRCA1 gene because my dad is a carrier of the mutation. And he found out about this because his mom passed away when he was 18 of breast cancer. And, you know, studies started to come out when I was in college about potential genetic links. And so he went and got tested alongside his 2 sisters. They were both negative, but he was positive. And the gene has a 50-50 chance of passing on to any offspring. And so as soon as he found that out, he sat my brother and I down and let us know about this information. And I was maybe 20, 21 at the time, and just thought I was invincible, you know, also was struggling with all of the things I just mentioned. And so I was like, I can't take another thing on right now.
Are you fucking kidding me? I'm good. I'm just trying to figure this shit out first.
Right. I was like, I can't. I'm not even going to research this. Like, I can't do it. But, you know, as I've been progressing and really doing a lot of inner work, I've realized that I've spent a lot of my life playing small and a lot of my life holding myself back out of fear. And I went into 2018, I always set an intention word instead of like a New Year's resolution. Every year I set an intention word, and my word for 2018 was unapologetic. And it's really just followed me. That word means so much to me now. And to me, it reflected entering a time where I was not going to let my fears hold me back anymore. And so the very first thing I did was call my doctor in January and request to be tested. And so if you have a genetic history or family history, it's super easy to just get a blood test really quick. And so I did. It took a couple of weeks.
Was your dad trying to encourage you before that? So you spent like, how many years?
7 years. Yeah.
7 years knowing about this, and you just never wanted to be tested. Why not?
Yeah. I was scared. I was really scared. And also because I knew that if I was positive, which I intuitively felt was true from the moment he told me, I just knew, something inside of me knew that was true. And I knew that if I was positive, that I would take action around it, because there are different options. But I knew that I would take action. And I spent so much time in my younger 20s really struggling with looking at myself in the mirror and not hating everything I saw. And going through a major surgery that essentially cuts off your boobs, A, like there was going to be scarring, and B, I knew that was going to change things and potentially really shift the way I looked at myself. And I was in such a negative place that I didn't know that I would be able to come out of that okay. And that my mental health would just not be in a good spot. And so I think I really struggled with taking action on it. And I don't regret that choice, because I truly believe that the reason I have been like so in such a good place and feel it and recovered so quickly from this experience is because I waited. But it also, I got my surgery at 27, and the really like, it becomes way, way, way more possible of getting breast cancer if you have the gene after 25, which is really young. And so, there was a chance that I could have really not been lucky. Like, I think I was lucky in the process.
You were more worried about how you were going to look rather than your health.
Yeah, I was. And also I think part of that was how I was going to feel mentally, because my mental health was so unstable at the time. And I was so knee deep in anxiety for the first time in my life and having panic attacks. And I just knew that was going to perpetuate it. And now knowing and seeing and speaking to so many women who do navigate this, who don't have the tools in their toolbox and aren't in a good mindset space, it is palpable. Like the mental health and the component of that they navigate is really challenging for them. And so I'm really grateful that time, but it was definitely a risk. And I don't think I really understood that at the time, though. I was so young. So yeah. Anyways, and then fast forward to, moving into that time frame, and deciding to be unapologetic about it. I got tested for it and found out 2 days after my 27th birthday that I was positive.
Mm-hmm. So for you, when you went back into the office of the doctor and kind of sat down and went through it, what did that feel like? Talk us through like how they kind of explained that to you.
So coming back into, when I was finding out, so I got tested in January, and then 2 days after my 27th birthday in February, I found out that I was positive. And, it was one of those like, okay, yeah, I knew this was going to happen moments, because I had intuitively just known. But also, it was 2 days before I was leaving for like a 10-day trip to like LA and San Francisco and Hawaii. And so I was like, I don't have time to process this. I did the first day. I like found out, immediately called my husband who was at work, immediately called my parents, and then hung up and just like threw off all my clothes and ran to my bathroom and just had like a full-on sob fest in the shower. I don't know what it is about our cry fests that just make like everything amazing. Yeah. And then I honestly, like, that was the last time I really cried and felt my feelings for a couple of weeks, until I was sitting on a beach in Hawaii by myself for like the first time, and just really allowed myself to process, because I'm a kind of person that has a hard time feeling the feels. I have to intentionally step into that. I like to just be positive all the time. It's like how I love to live my life. And I spent so much of my life not being that way that I try to be that way all the time now. But it also means that sometimes letting my emotions out, it can be challenging for me. And Let's just say that the last year has been filled with a lot of emotions. And the process, you know, that you go through, there's so many paths you can take. And I think the biggest and the scariest part of it for me was there was not any information about it. Like I was trying to find other women who are my age who were going through this. And I was bumping up against 50 plus women who had already had kids and were just at super different points in their life. And I was like, where are the 20-year-olds? Like, I don't want there to be 20-year-olds going through this, but like, where are they? Like, I don't want to be alone here. And it just felt really scary and isolating. And there just isn't a lot of information about what to do and what the best steps are and support in that capacity. And so I was like, okay, fuck, like I'll talk about it. And so that's kind of how I think that was the light for me in the process, the past year, like just being able to talk openly about it, you know, on my Instagram with my podcast, and just create connections. And in the process, I have met more women than I would like that are in their 20s who are navigating this, whether it's with actual breast cancer, or with the gene. But it's been so eye-opening, and it shocks me that I didn't know about this. It shocks me that something that I think is so, I mean, 1 in 8 women are diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime. 1 in 8. Like you look around when you're having dinner with your friends, like that's one of those people. And like, that is not a small statistic. And I just think that it's not spoken about enough. And I think we think like, oh, well, that happens to our moms, that happens to our, you know, the older generation. And we don't think that it could happen to ourselves. And so being an advocate for BRCA has been so important to me, but also like talking about it openly and empowering other women to like understand what their health choices are and take advocacy with their health in this way has become so important to me too. And it's also made me see health in a whole new light too, which has been really interesting. So
that's so amazing. So after you had the doctor's appointment and you found out that you were positive, how long after did you have the operation? What did that entail? Because what does that look like? So I think a lot of people are very like curious about like, well, how much do they take out? Is it like your whole nipple's gone? Is it your boob? Like,
totally.
What happens?
Yeah. So I found out in February about being positive. In March, I went and saw a genetic counselor with my husband, and she basically like walked us through all the potential options because there are lots of different routes you can take. I knew that I wanted to go through with the double mastectomy because it erases your chances of getting breast cancer like up to 99%. And to me, I was like, I'm not fucking around. Like, I don't want to die. Like, let's just do this. And then
what are the other options? What are the other options that you can do?
The other option is surveillance. So, you know, you can just be really diligent with getting mammograms and, you know, going to see the doctor every 6 months. It can be a very expensive route, but some women aren't ready to part with their breasts, or if they're young enough and they want to have kids and breastfeeding is important to them, that's something to consider because you can't breastfeed if you have the surgery. So, you know, that's some people's choice. I knew it wasn't for me. And so, yeah. And then I scheduled my surgery for December 3rd of 2018. So I had a while to lead up to it, which I'm grateful for because it allowed me to really, I did like a whole fitness regime, like leading up to it that really allowed me to maintain my strength. And I really think that that was a huge contributing factor to my recovery process being so quick. And I also, you know, I had travel plans and just stuff that didn't work out at happening sooner. And it was kind of convenient being around Christmas, just like laying on my couch, you know, for 3 weeks, recovering. But yeah, the surgery itself, there are a bunch of options. So I had what's called a DTI, direct to implant, preventative double mastectomy. And it was over the muscle. So I'll explain what all those mean. So when you have surgery the way that I did, which was with reconstruction, you have a breast surgeon and a plastic surgeon that you're working with. So I also spent a lot of the time between deciding to get the surgery and having the surgery, like basically interviewing surgeons and picking my team, because it was really important to me to work with people that I loved and felt really comfortable with and that did really great work. And so that was a part of the process. And then I was a candidate for a direct to implant, which basically means that I only had to have one surgery instead of two. So a lot of women, either from an age standpoint, or if they're trying to augment their breast size, or they're just not in a good enough shape, they will have to have two surgeries. And so the first surgery, the breast surgeon will come in and remove all the breast tissue. And then slowly they'll start having like fills, and they'll put these expanders, they're called expanders, in your breast cavity, I guess, to help stretch the tissue out so that the implant can be ready to be received, usually 3 to 4 months down the road, but it depends on the person. Because I was a candidate for direct to implant, which is what I wanted to do, I just had one surgery. So it was about 4 to 5 hours, and my breast surgeon went in, took out the tissue, and then she moved on to the other boob, and then my plastic surgeon came in, and he put the implant in and sewed me up, and then I woke up groggy AF afterwards. But yeah, and then also you can choose to either put the implants over or under the muscle. So I chose to go over the muscle, which my surgeon actually didn't recommend me doing. Cosmetically speaking, it can not look as quote natural. But as somebody who moves their body for a living in all capacities, I didn't want to be limited. And when you go over the muscle, you don't like torture the muscle at all, and it doesn't go any like under it at all. But when you go under the muscle, obviously it does. And so the recovery process can be a lot more strenuous. You sometimes don't gain all of your mobility back and strength. And that just wasn't something I was willing to risk. I didn't care if I had wavy tits because sometimes you have like ripples. So
you got a new pair of boobs.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's interesting. Like I've had a few people be like, well, the bright side is like, you got a free boob job. And I'm like, it's not really that. Yeah, it's definitely not really that. But I chose to keep my nipples. That's also something you can choose to either not do or do. I chose to keep my nipples. I'm really, really impressed with the work that my surgeons did. Like you wouldn't know looking at my boobs that I had surgery. Like the scars are underneath. But I mean, I've lost complete feeling there, so I know for sure, and they definitely feel different. But I'm just like so grateful that I had the opportunity to choose, like every day I sit back and I go, okay, like I could have had breast cancer, and I don't now have to ever worry about that because I made this choice, and that's really empowering. So yeah. I mean, do you have any other questions about the nitty gritty of the surgery?
No, I feel like that gives a lot of people confidence because when you feel like, oh my goodness, my boobs are going to get removed, like your brain goes to like, they're just gone. Like I'm going to look like a guy. I'm going to like have pecs. Maybe.
Oh my God. I thought I was going to look like Frankentits. I kept saying that. I was like, I'm gonna look like Frankenstein. Like, you're never gonna want to fuck me again. Like, that's what I said to my husband. I was like, this is gonna be terrible.
But actually, the way that you're describing it, I mean, it's something massive to go through with that surgery. And at the end of the day, if you can come out with something that looks kind of similar to what you had before, I feel like mentally, like, that's a much better way of going into it, knowing like, oh, if this isn't gonna happen, like, I've taken all my chances away of having breast cancer. And at the same time, I'm also not just taking away my female side.
Yeah. I mean, yes. And like, I think I ended up with a really lucky situation. I know a lot of women who have not had as good surgeons, or their bodies just didn't allow for, that look to be quite the way it was. But that being said, like, if I were to sit here and say like, I feel like great, I have not had any fears or any like, anxiety about any of this, I'd be fully lying. Like it's been challenging. And there have definitely been moments where like it, like reclaiming my sexuality and like realizing that like my breast played a really big part in that before. And now it's weird when they're felt, like that's a new thing for me to navigate and talk through with my husband, and, just like figure out how that changes things for me. And also,
what are you missing?
That's an interesting question. No, I don't feel that way. I think I feel like the knowledge that I have this gene has changed the trajectory of my life. Both in positive and hard ways. Like I think the positives that have come out from it, from being connected to so many women and being able to be an advocate for it, and it being the impetus for me writing my book, and all of these things have been so empowering. But, you know, this is only like a piece of my puzzle, right? Ovarian cancer is a big part of this genetic mutation too. And that's something I have to start thinking about now. And, you know, it's changed my perspective on if I want to be a mom and what that looks like. And, you know, there's just so many things now that I didn't have to think about before that are constantly spinning in my head, you know? And so that in and of itself has been super transformational, both in, you know, challenging and positive ways.
Mm-hmm. So what advice would you give to somebody out there that's like watching this is like, hey, I don't even know if I have that gene. Should I go and get tested? Like, what are the next steps?
Yeah.
For people?
I mean, I would say if you have any family history of breast or ovarian cancer, talk to your family and you can get tested. If you don't have family history and you know that, you can get tested through, there's like the color test, which is a swab based test, and that has the BRCA. It's $99, I think. And so you can do it that way if you can't afford to pay out of pocket for the blood test, which is unfortunately expensive, at least in the United States. But if you have family history, or if you are of Ashkenazi Jew descent, it's a really rampant in that population too. It's just, I think it's really important to know your history and get those answers so you can make an educated choice, so you can take your health into your hands instead of, you know, but who the fuck knows? And I don't want you to end up finding a lump on your breast like some of the women I've met. You know, it's just, it's crazy. Like 21-year-old women like finding lumps in their breasts, like in the shower. And it's just, you don't need to be that girl. I don't want you to be that girl.
Absolutely. So if you feel like you have any history, it's just go to speak to your GP straight away and get that booked in. And just, what do they need to ask for? What's the test called?
The BRCA gene. So just say like, I want to be tested for the BRCA gene mutation. And then it'll get tested for both strands. So you can see if it's one or two. But again, if you can't, which I know has been a struggle for some people, you can do it through certain swab tests that you take too. Cause it's, you know, it's in your genes, it's in your genetic makeup. So.
Right. And then, so if somebody's like, hey, I don't have any family history, but like, because it can still happen to somebody who doesn't have family history and actually have breast cancer.
Totally.
What are the tips to do? How do you check yourself? Like, you know,
yeah.
One of my girlfriends, she found it in the shower. She was like stage 3 breast cancer.
Yeah, totally. So there are a couple resources I would direct you to. One is called the Bright Pink Foundation. And they, their Instagram is great. They like show you how to like feel your breasts what I just do is feel it on the first. So the first of every month, like I feel my boobs and just check for anything that you'll know if there's a lump, like it'll just feel really fucking different, and abnormal. And also like the best thing that you can do is take care of your body. Exercise 30 minutes a day, at least 5 days a week. Like that is huge for preventing breast cancer. But also like your nutrition is a huge factor to that. So anything that you know is positive for your gut health, like that's also gonna be positive for, you know, making sure that you don't put yourself at risk for cancer of any kind, honestly, but especially breast cancer too. So it's the simple things, taking care of yourself, right? And you prevent so many things by just being kind to your body and moving your body. Like exercise really has a huge contributing factor to preventing breast cancer. So,
and if you do feel something, go in. Like,
go in. Don't second guess it. Don't wait.
Don't second guess it. Absolutely. Okay. So you have a book, you're writing a book at the moment. Mm-hmm. What is the book all about?
Yeah. So it's 2 parts, my story. And so I deep dive into like the nitty gritty details of the whole experience, like leading up to surgery and through surgery and post. And then the second and third parts of the book are focused on fear and how to really flip your mindset. And it's like each chapter is like a specific fear that I had, or I also interviewed a lot of women who either had breast cancer or BRCA who've navigated this journey too. And so there's little anecdotal stories from them too, and just like expressing their fears. And it's going to be really amazing and super silly. Like my husband's been reading it and he like, I hear him laugh from the other room out loud. And I'm like, okay, if he thinks it's funny, which like, he doesn't usually think I'm funny. So if he thinks it's funny, then like people are going to laugh. So it's definitely not like super morbid. There's definitely a lot of I mean, honesty. I don't know how to be anything but candid, as you probably have noticed. So it's a lot of real talk, but it's definitely a lot of fun and knowledge and self-development, honestly.
And when does that come out?
It's going to be coming out this fall. And if you guys want to get more details and like as the things all come together, if you just go to amandacatherineloy.com/book, you can put yourselves on a list and get all the nitty-gritty details that way.
Fantastic. And just to finish off, before the book comes out, you also have the Fuck Yes Life, right? How do you get involved in that? What's it about? What can we get from that?
Yeah. So that's like my overarching brand. I really believe that when we take care of ourselves, that's the path to living your Fuck Yes Life, not my Fuck Yes Life, but yours. And I just think that being able to fully be yourself and not dim the light from within is the best thing you can do, whether that's, working on your health from an emotional eating standpoint or just having a support space. So it really started with launching my podcast, which is called Live Your Fuck Yes Life, where we navigate the, quarter life crisis BS and topics like sex, relationships, mental health, all the stuff. And since then it's really evolved. I mean, my listeners are amazing and are super weird and an incredible dorky bunch. And I'm just obsessed with them. And they love to swear as much as I do. And so it's evolved into a membership community. Now that I run every month too, called the Live Your Fuck Yes Life membership. And it's a space online where we come and have support, and I do mindset work in there every month. There's like a theme of the month with journaling prompts, and I do a mindset training and then bring in guest experts who usually come on my podcast, but then they're all also going to have like an extra hour in there where they answer listener specific questions and people in the membership. So it's a really fun space to hang out. We get candid AF, and yeah, that's like my favorite place to hang out on the internet.
That's so awesome. You really sound like you found your tribe. Like you really found people that like connect to you. And I think that's so awesome when you're like, oh, if you're just authentic, you're going to find people just like you. And it's okay if you're weird and kooky and swear and you like to do this and you don't like to do that, because you will attract your people and you will disattract people that aren't.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, like half of them are as obsessed with Harry Potter as I am. The other half go to bed at like 10 o'clock like me. It's like baby grandma life forever.
Yeah. Perfect. You guys were meant to be. Like you're meant to find each other.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So where can we find all of your social handles, your podcast? List off everything for us.
Yeah. So everything is at Amanda Catherine Loy. So you can find me at Instagram there. Catherine is with a K. Also my website's Amanda Catherine Loy. And if you want to check out my podcast, it's called Live Your Fuck Yes Life.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for educating us today and just sharing your story. I know it's not always easy to kind of relive what you've been through, but I know that it's really impactful for a lot of people. So thank you so much, lovely. That was an awesome chat. Loved it.
Thank you for having me. This was so fucking fun.
So fun. This is what we do. So we were talking earlier, just lastly, as we cap this off, about how we feel that like we actually have friends because we're talking to each other in houses and we might not ever leave the house. But I feel like I've had a chat with a girlfriend for an hour today. This is awesome.
I know. I love it so much.
Love it. Well, guys, thank you so much for listening to It Takes Grit. Make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel over Rebecca Louise, and also the podcast itself, It Takes Grit, on iTunes and Spotify. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.